you can see I've put a relatively bold statement on the screen. Singing through a straw can make you an awesome singer. It's something I do genuinely, truly believe in. And I'm going to justify kind of the reasonings behind that bold statement today. But it's kind of not as black and white, I suppose, or as simple as people kind of expect. Like, oh, suddenly I sing through this straw and now I'm the best singer in the world. No. Think of it more, and in fact, think of everything that we explored today more like an athlete or anybody going to a gym and using the equipment in the gym to train their bodies to do the tasks that they want to do. So in this instance, the straw is a piece of equipment in the gym, and we are the athlete, and we can use the straw in various different ways to assist us in developing our voices to make us awesome singers. So that's kind of where we're at. What is SOVT? So SOVT stands for semi-occluded vocal tract. And that's just a really fancy way of saying that there is some kind of partial closure at some point along the vocal tract. We've got here a couple of animation bits to kind of illustrate how this all works. Right, so here we have kind of the vocal folds. And below that, obviously, where you can't see, we have the lungs. And as air is moving through the system, it goes through and past the bottom of the vocal folds all the way out until it reaches the level of the mouth or the level of the occlusion, whatever that occlusion might be. Let's just consider the instance of no occlusion. So no straw, no change, nothing, and we're just singing normally. When we use the air, that creates energy in the form of acoustic energy at the vocal fold level, and air pressure, which moves upward and outward of the body, and then it goes out into the world and it exists in the world, and then it's absolutely useless to us, except for it comes back to our ears and we can listen to the sound that we've just made. But we can't use it in any other useful way. However, when we put something like a straw at the level of the lips and we prevent some of this energy from escaping the system, we create what's called back pressure, or reflections of this air and acoustic energy that gets sent backwards down the vocal tract from wherever that occlusion is. So you can see the air pressure and acoustic energy moves to meet the occlusion, so the straw. Some of it escapes through the straw and some of it gets sent back downwards down the vocal tract to re-interact with the vocal folds from above. And the easiest way to think of this process is recycling. So it's exactly the same as giving energy, taking the energy that we've just given and reusing some of that energy to help us continue to do the thing that we want to do. So we help continual vocal function, efficient continual vocal function, by the reintegration of the acoustic energy and the air pressure that we've just exerted as singers. Now, when we kind of zoom into this a little bit more with the circle diagram here, or animation rather, you can see that energy is building up beneath the vocal folds. That energy moves through and past the vocal folds. And then obviously something happens above that we can't quite see in that smaller animation, but we get that reflection back down. And it shapes up the top of the vocal folds. It realigns them to make them more aerodynamic. And it just positions the muscles a little bit better to help us move air through this system in a much more efficient way. So the vocal folds, again, become more efficient at the tasks that they're doing. What are the benefits of SOVT or straw singing? Well, naturally, by making the system more efficient, it helps us sing with ease. If you make anything more efficient, the thing that you're trying to do is going to be easier. We can use these interventions as a way to strengthen the voice. And by strengthen the voice, I mean strengthen coordination, but also to strengthen the muscle themselves, or the muscles themselves. And again, this is just kind of going back to that athlete scenario in a gym where they might use weights to train muscles to build stronger muscle groups. We would use straws in different ways to build vocal strength. The way this air cushiony, pressury business works in this animation, you can see that we have air pressure from below and we have air pressure from above and in the middle of the vocal folds. Now that's really cool because that provides us with a system that is protective. The vocal folds are sat in between two pressure systems, and so it's like they're sat on an air cushion. Why this is really good is because it prevents really harsh collision forces. So as the vocal folds oscillate or vibrate, and sometimes they might do this hundreds or thousands of times a second, there's collision forces. Exactly the same as clapping. Our vocal folds are clapping in here, our hands are clapping externally to make sound. And we want to prevent the vocal folds from forcibly slamming back together because that might induce damage or other vocal issues. And by using SOVT in this way, or straw phonation, we protect the vocal folds with a little cushion of air, which is really nice. Think of this like soft close kitchen cabinets. So the type that you can slam as hard as you possibly like, but right at the very end, they'll catch, right? And they'll just catch and they'll gently ease together. Imagine straw phonation doing that to the intricate muscles of the voice. I think it's a nice little image. So you can see as a result of all of these things, we create a really efficient environment, which aids in efficient vocal fold vibration. Now, all of that then leads us to, we can gain vocal power without straining. If everything is easier, more efficient and stronger and protected, we can more efficiently use our input energy to get a greater output, which is really cool. And then the last point, recover tired and fatigued voices. Now, most people at this point go, how can you use this intervention to kind of be almost therapeutic whilst also being very athletic with the strength building side of things? And that just comes down to how you use the straw. There's ways that we can use the straw, for instance, by putting it into water, that create a more therapeutic environment, which helps us recover tired and fatigued voices. Or we can use the straw in a more gentle way that allows us to be a little bit more therapeutic. And we'll cover a lot of this today, so you get a really good understanding and an idea of all the different bits you can do. But this is our kind of higher order look at straws. There is no one size fits all approach. It doesn't work like that. We can't go to the supermarket, pick up a random packet of straws and expect it to work for yourself or for a group that you're teaching. Maybe one will in 10, but we have to find something that is much more suitable to the individual. And the reason for this is due to something called phonation threshold pressure. And I don't want to kind of get scary at any point. And the easiest way to explain phonation threshold pressure, or PTP, is it's the minimum level of energy that we can input into the vocal folds to get them to do something. And so this is the same animation from before, just a little bit bigger. And so you can see energy is coming from the lungs. So air pressure is coming from the lungs. It builds up beneath the bottom of the vocal folds. So air pressure is coming from the lungs and it builds up beneath the bottom of the vocal folds. And at some point, the vocal folds are going to go, I can't resist this pressure anymore. I'm going to have to do something. And then they part from the bottom to the top. And as the air moves through, we begin the oscillation cycle. So it's the minimum level of energy we can use to make sound at a given pitch. Why this is really important is, for the most efficient vocal function, we need to match the resistance that the straw can offer us with the natural resistive state of the vocal folds. However, PTP, phonation threshold pressure, is variable, which is slightly annoying. And I'll explain this variability. Kind of makes sense when you think about it like this. So these are all the factors that affect phonation threshold pressure. And by affecting phonation threshold pressure, we change which straw or which configuration of straw would be appropriate. So let's consider individual differences. Everybody, with I suppose the exception of identical twins, is anatomically different. We all have different lung sizes. We all have different chest cavities. We have different vocal tract lengths, sizes, different vocal fold lengths. So we're all different. Because of those differences, we will use energy in terms of air pressure differently to somebody else. And if we change the way we use this different energy in these different states, and if we change the different lengths and sizes of all these different systems, then it becomes naturally different in its resistance. And so that's why we cannot pick up a random packet of straws and go, here you go, work with this, because it might not be suitable to balance the resistance that the individual has in their unique anatomy to the straw that we're trying to give them. To complicate things even further, change in pitch also changes phonation threshold pressure. It's slightly easier to remember though. As pitch increases, so does phonation threshold pressure. So we need more energy to get higher in pitch. And that kind of makes sense. If I play a note on the piano that's relatively low, that frequency is vibrating slower. There's less energy. If I play a note on the piano that's relatively high, there's faster vibrations, higher frequency, and more energy. So we need to input more energy to get more energy out of the system. And so that's why PTP changes with pitch. On a similar vein, there's differences in task. You know, if we're belting something, if we're singing in head voice, if we want to be a little bit more darker or brighter, or, you know, whatever we're doing, we're changing the mechanical operation of the system, which again changes the resistance and the level at which we can start sound production. So that's another variable. The other then is vocal fatigue. If we've worked the voice too much, if it's tired and it doesn't want to do anything else, it ain't going to do anything else. And so we've got to put more energy into that system to make it do the things that we want it to do. As well, we have things like hydration. If you are dehydrated in any capacity, things will become rougher and stiffer and harder to move. At the vocal fold level, that means the vocal folds become harder to set into motion because they're rougher and stiffer and they aren't as lubricated. And that means we have to put more energy into the system to get them to move. Now, you can use straws to help with that, but the easiest thing to do is just drink more and drink more appropriately throughout the day. It takes roughly 4-ish hours for whatever you ingest to reach the vocal folds. And so if you're thinking you're just about to go on stage and you're like, right, I'm super dehydrated, I'm going to drink. Unfortunately, by the time you've finished your show, that's when what you've just ingested is going to reach the place it needs to hydrate it. And so in instances like that, you can use straw phonation as sort of a quick fix, but it's not something that we encourage. Just drink more water, basically. So I put it here because it's useful to know about, but drinking is the solution. Now, of course, athletic skill, just like any other discipline, will change how efficiently and how coordinated you use your system. If you're a very, very skilled singer, if you've been training for years and years and years, and you've got really good control of all of your muscle groups and all of your sound production, then you're more efficient to begin with. And so you can better manage your baseline phonation threshold pressure. So you might need a different type of straw to somebody else. Hormonal changes also play quite a big role. And so depending, I suppose, especially for women, but if people are going through hormonal therapies or having like transgender treatments, then these different treatments and therapies will also change how resistive the vocal folds are naturally due to changing structures and inflammation potentially, depending on how these hormones are affecting you. And that's really important because if we change anything at the vocal fold level, we change its resistance, which means we might need a different straw. So that's really important to consider as well.